It's obviously changing the way, for example, in cybersecurity, it is making cyber attacks more complex, but easier to do. At the same time, we could use that same technology to make our defense processes also more efficient. So we can use artificial intelligence to absorb and interpret huge quantities of data that a person or a team of people cannot really do.
We are once again back with Super Lawyer YouTube channel. Today, we are welcoming Ms. Victoria Beckman, who is Associate General Counsel and Security and Privacy Expert. She has been a Rising Star Award honoree of MCCA in 2021. She has been top 50 cybersecurity influencer in 2022-23. And she is one of the superwoman, super lawyer who has made her name in this field, not only in LinkedIn, but also through her versatile profile. Today, we have her to tell her story. We are here to listen about your story. What inspired you to do JD after you were already an industrial engineering degree holder?
Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm very excited to be here today. And I actually didn't really make the decision. It was circumstantial. I had come from Colombia, where I was born and raised, to the United States as an engineer. And there were all kinds of things. I happened to land in the United States on September 11, 2001. So my plans were changed immediately. And at the time, I was fairly young. I was 21. I was an engineer working at a plant with a bunch of men that have been there for a long time, that had a lot of experience, even if they didn't have specific degrees. And so it was a rough environment. I was too young to really even understand. To be honest, I wanted to go back to school to change my visa so I could stay in the US, and I needed a student visa, but I didn't speak much English at the time. So one of my friends said, you should take the LSAT, which is the admission test for a JD, because it has a lot of reading comprehension, and you will know what it is to take a standardized test and how it feels. And that's how the idea came about. I wasn't thinking of being an attorney. No one in my family is an attorney. I didn't even know what attorneys did. And I took the LSAT, and somehow, out of a miracle, I did fairly well and applied to law school. I'm an only child, and I didn't tell my parents that I was doing all of that. I quit my job until I was accepted into law school. And then I said, well, change your plans. And my parents were not very excited. My dad specifically was not very excited. He said, what's wrong with being an engineer? And he actually said, why do you want to steal people's money? And I said, I'm not going to do that. And so that's kind of how it happened. And I didn't really even know what I was doing, but I'm glad that that happened because I really like what I do.
Wow, such motivational story for a first generation lawyer. That brings me to this next question about how did you build your journey, or how did you build your roadmap in getting involved with data privacy and other emerging tech? Was the engineering background play in that, or was it your motivation that you have entered into such a niche field and you are making a name out of it?
Well, I wish I had that nice story of things being planned. But just like the decision to go to law school was kind of circumstantial and luck. Once I went to law school, I wanted to be a public defender. That was my dream. And while I was in law school, I was an intern at the public defender's office. And I did that for about a year and a half. That was my plan. And a mentor I had said, well, you should go to a law firm because the way they hire in the US is kind of out of rankings from law school, and it's harder to go the other way around. If you don't like being a public defender, it's harder to get a job at a firm, blah, 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 convinced me. And I said, okay, I'll go to a firm. I went to a firm and they assigned me to do intellectual property litigation because of my background. And to be quite honest, I did not like working at a firm. I worked there for 2 years. I didn't like the hierarchy. I didn't like the super formal structure, the politics. So I said, okay, I've been here for 2 years. I'm going to go do what I like to do, which is being a public defender. And I did that. So I went and worked as a public defender. I loved it. I wasn't planning to do anything else. I happened to meet my now husband. I was at the time living in Arizona. He's from Ohio. And we decided to get married. And when we wanted to have kids, my family is all back in Colombia. His family is in Ohio. So we moved to Ohio to have some support system. And I couldn't get a job as a public defender in Ohio. There are some allocations, and people who are public defenders really love their jobs. It takes a lot for one of them to leave. So I was pretty much forced into taking a job back at a law firm. And my background played a little bit in the sense that once I was there, about a month later, a case came into the firm that involved a hacker that had moved some money to China. And there were forensic reports, and the owner of the law firm, it was a very small law firm, said, well, you're an engineer, read these reports and you figure it out. And I read them and I didn't understand absolutely anything. I had no idea what that was about, but I did like it. I said, well, I do like this kind of technical aspect. And if I'm going to be at a law firm, which I didn't want to at the time, well, then this is something that I want to learn about. And then I did dedicate myself to start reading about it. And I just love it. I find it fascinating that it was very easy for me to read about it, take classes, go to conferences, and kind of spread around that was my practice. And I built my practice that way.
So you are living by the way Yoda says, do or do not, there is no try. And I can see
Right.
a little in your surrounding. I guess that is your motivation, and you have done it all, I would say. By after being a first gen lawyer, it is definitely difficult, and obviously gender also plays a very vital role in this. I always state that intentionally. I hope you don't mind me speaking about this. Coming back to this data privacy field, would you like to share some significant challenges that organizations have been facing, and you were instrumental in finding that kind of technological landscape which helps them build a better data privacy regime, because the whole landscape is changing every day. Privacy is also taking new variety of shapes. We would love to listen about your thoughts regarding that.
I think there are a lot of challenges, the same way that there are a lot of opportunities. But nowadays, what I think is the most difficult for organizations is that technology is advancing so fast, and regulation and even consequences of technology are not keeping up with it. So we have good technology, but we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what risks it's going to have for the data subjects. So it's a little bit hard for organizations to keep up with new regulations, with different regulations per jurisdiction. In terms of data privacy, you have to be aware of different US state privacy laws, GDPR, India, Canada, you name it. And the same goes for cybersecurity, the same goes for artificial intelligence. Then there is technology, which I don't think technology is good or bad. I think technology depends on how you use it. Everything could be used for nefarious purposes, or it could be used for good. And so that balance in trying to be compliant, trying to adopt new technology, trying to be flexible and take that change, I think is hard for organizations. It's also hard for big organizations to just make any change regardless. So when you have to accommodate and change processes and change the way that people work, or what your considerations are in products, it brings big spends, a big cultural change, a lot of thinking as to what's best for our clients, and how do we protect their privacy? How do we keep their information safe? So I think kind of being global and new technologies are kind of both a great thing, but also what brings the most difficulty in changing.
You have proved time and again by your posts that you already are a thought leader in this particular field. Would you like to share some examples of kind of trends that you foresee, that you believe will become profoundly impactful in terms of data privacy, and obviously humans who are involved in that particular privacy game altogether? If you'd like to shed some light on that as well.
I think, and it sounds like a buzzword because everybody's talking about it, but I definitely think artificial intelligence is going to change a lot the way we work. I'm not saying that I think it's going to replace humans. I don't think that's going to be the case, but it does have, as I said, some consequences that we weren't aware of, or that we have to decide whether or not we're willing to pay the price to have the technology versus, in terms of privacy, artificial intelligence having all of our information, training language models with this information. We have seen all kinds of issues with bias, with the way that these models are developed. They are heavily developed in English-speaking countries and countries where the population is maybe homogeneous, or they're being trained by certain races or certain genders. But at the same time, and it's obviously changing the way, for example, in cybersecurity, it is making cyber attacks more complex, but easier to do. At the same time, we could use that same technology to make our defense processes also more efficient. So we can use artificial intelligence to absorb and interpret huge quantities of data that a person or a team of people cannot really do. So I think it changes how we interact with the technology and with others. I just see it kind of being part of our lives more and more every day. And I don't know, maybe we'll be like the Jetsons or something, like where we will have these like machines in our house doing stuff, but also that means that they know everything about us. Who knows? There's going to be changes for sure, good and bad, but changes for sure.
Absolutely true that they will not take human world, but then they will definitely help us. That's what I feel. Obviously, technology cannot be said as good or bad. So you have been a keynote speaker and you have been to many, many conferences invited to talk about this aspect itself. But the diversity of that particular or any specific conference is way too much. There are versatile backgrounds who are there and they have variety of queries related to this. How do you formulate your answers, or maybe the lecture which makes sense to all of the fraternities, I would say, not only legal or technical, because others are also now getting very curious about AI, cybersecurity, and data privacy as well. So what makes you focus that particular topic there to make sure that the whole audience is able to comprehend with the fact?
Well, I mean, I just have to put it on my level. I'm not genius, so I'm pretty sure people can understand. But for example, I have presented what it is to be a cybersecurity attorney at my kids' school, or at groups of very young kids, like high schoolers and things like that. And obviously, it's not different than presenting to, I don't know, like this team of like geniuses, in the sense that I look for things that are easy to understand because they can identify with. So I feel we're all, no matter who we are in our lives, can understand, for example, our dependency with phones and the importance of what information we feed our phones, we feed certain systems, and how important it is to keep that information safe and what will happen if it's not safe. So I try to make it in terms that people can identify. The same with training of employees, for example. I do some training of employees and I put it as basic as, have you seen movies when they say X or Y? Well, the same works this way. I, for example, have a slide that I have the movie where it says everything you say can be used against you in a court of law. I think pretty much everybody who has seen a movie has seen that. And I use that to say, it is true. Think about it. What you're saying in these reports, or what you're saying when you're working on incident response, for example, has a lot of consequences. So if you're freaking out, writing in all caps, we had a data breach, then think about how we will explain that later when we say, for example, no, we didn't think it was a big deal. Well, you were talking internally about this huge data breach. How are you going to tell me? So I try to make it the same way that I would understand as a regular person.
That's a great example. The way you explained it definitely makes sense, that if you take examples of something which you can connect with, then definitely there is a possibility that people will also connect. So although all the fields in the world are traditionally dominated by men, but this is predominantly owned by men, I would say, the cybersecurity field, the data privacy field, or AI field. How have you faced this unique challenge and became the advocate for diversity and inclusion, especially in tech industry where it was not even talked about some time back itself? What kind of advice would you like to impart for women and underrepresented groups who are aspiring to pursue these careers related to data privacy or emerging tech, or even for that matter, legal career? What kind of thought would you like to share with them?
Well, number one, I'm a huge advocate. I believe wholeheartedly in diversity. Diversity not only of race, of gender, but backgrounds, economic backgrounds, social backgrounds, you name it. It is super important to have those different points of view, those different perspectives, because things that affect me or that I think about may not be things that you think about or someone else thinks about, because you're not facing them on a daily basis. In my personal life, yes, I have been in teams, and I normally work in teams where I'm the only woman in the room. I personally don't take myself seriously. I realize that I can learn from anyone. I welcome ideas from anyone. And sometimes people are kind of, at least they tell me, sometimes they feel intimidated just by the fact that there is an attorney in the room. And I keep telling them, like, you're not in trouble. But I don't take myself seriously. I'm pretty goofy as it is. I'm pretty clumsy, so I normally spill my coffee and spill things. It's kind of an icebreaker that is built into my personality. And what I'm trying to do with what I do is show some representation. I think it's very important for anyone to see someone that looks like you, sounds like you, to think, okay, well, this is possible. I can see myself being that or doing that. And just kind of a little bit of fake it until you make it to convince yourself. I'm not saying go around spraying lies, but to convince yourself that you belong in those rooms, that if you have a study and you have worked on the field, you are as qualified as anyone else. Sometimes I find that some other people can fake it better. Like they sound very confident, but at the end of the day, if you look, it's just that they're able to portray themselves in a more confident way than really what they're saying is more valuable than what anyone is saying. And try to find people who will be your cheerleaders. I try to do that a lot. I think it's a responsibility that we have already, the ones that are in the field, to welcome others, to tell them that no question is dumb or anything, and to feel comfortable with asking questions, with making mistakes. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes every day, and we're going to be learning, and things that I don't know, someone else will know. So I think it's a combination, and unfortunately, I feel that there is a heavy lifting that has to be done on our part, on the part of the minorities and the diverse people, to kind of be like, hey, this is important. So that part is unfortunate, but just try to remember that you are as valuable and as smart and as qualified as anyone else in the room.
What a beautiful piece of advice from your side. Thank you so much for that advice. I hope it reaches the masses and they understand that we have to take care of not only diversity but equality as well, the way you are talking about it. So given that fact, how do you see the kind of technologies, or for that matter emerging technologies, that are going to come up? How do you see yourself playing a crucial role in making sure that the kind of thought process that you have right now is also passed on, and the knowledge, like what kind of motivations would you like to talk to the new people who are entering the field and they really don't know where they should go, whom should they reach out? Why I'm asking this question is because many a times learners, they come to us and they are like, where should we go? We really don't know where to go and find the right person. And that plays the crucial role, and that definitely helps the first generation, especially lawyers, because if they know about the field and if they know the right person, there is a possibility they will make a better career out of it, and they will kind of become volunteers for what you are talking about, make it reach to more people. So what would you like to explain to them, that this is how they can plan their career in order to make sure that they are at the right place and they are able to achieve what they have planned for themselves?
I don't think it matters the kind of technology. I think When I'm hiring, for example, somebody, I don't necessarily look at their resume in the sense that obviously they have to have the skills that they need, but the subject matter, anyone that is intelligent can learn about privacy or data security if they dedicate themselves and read books, and in 3 months, they probably will be able to tell you all about it. But tenacity, charisma, being able to be flexible, to adapt, that's something that you cannot really teach. It's really hard to teach. So I think it's not limit themselves because, oh, well, this sounds like something difficult, or I don't have much experience. You don't have to have a linear career. I'm the perfect example. I've been all kinds of different things. You don't have to be an engineer to do this. You don't have to be, you could be whatever. And if you think, okay, well, I like this, then go for it. Go for it. You can always change. You can always learn the actual subject matter. Another thing is don't be afraid of rejection in a way. And I'm not saying necessarily rejection, but I often have people who write and are like, oh, do you have 30 minutes to have a chat? And I always say, yeah, sure. Because I always encourage people to do that, because the worst that can happen, I say, think about it. The worst that can happen is that person doesn't respond. Okay, you move on, you live your life, and you keep sending more and more requests. At some point, somebody will say yes. At some point, at worst, you will have a friend or you will talk to somebody, and you don't know what that person may say that is going to kind of click. So if there is something or someone you admire, go for it. Write to that person, ask for a chat. If they say no, well, they're lost, but nothing really happens to you. I mean, I can think of millions of times when I have written to somebody and written this whole thing and poem pretty much that I admire them or whatever, and then I don't get any answer. Okay, well, then whatever. And also, that is such a big field. It's so different. There's room for all of us, and there's room for people to do something that they love and specialize on that. Even within my team, I do security 90% of the time and very little privacy because I don't necessarily like that aspect as much. Some of my colleagues and teammates love certain things, privacy compliance. And so to each their own, they love it and they can do it. And I can do my work and we can be together and we are just better as a team. So you can do all kinds of different things. It's such a huge field. Even as an attorney, there are all kinds of different practices you can have. Everybody's welcome and everybody will find their own place in this career. And I personally, as I said, I can't even remember how many people, because I appreciate it when people believed in me. And yet to this day, when people give me an opportunity, when people are willing to talk to me, I really, really appreciate that. So I hope to be that person that maybe gave someone an opportunity, maybe gave that person some inspiration or some words that will help somehow. And at worst, again, they will just be like, oh, she's silly, and we'll move on with our lives.
That's such a beautiful thought you have shared, that what will go wrong at the max? They will not respond, it's okay. But then at least you reached out, you tried and you got a response, then it will make a difference. You are in one of the most stressful environments, I would say, cybersecurity. How do you de-stress yourself? If you're comfortable, would you be interested in sharing some ways, as in how you balance this personal and professional life at the same time?
Well, I'm afraid that people are going to be bored because it's not really that exciting. Well, one, I used to be a competitive figure skater, and I think I love the adrenaline and kind of the stress of this. I definitely enjoy it. So to me, it's not necessarily stressful. It's just like a day of excitement. Of course, there are stressful days and days that are just long, regardless of what you do. And it sounds boring, but I love doing jigsaw puzzles. I do that pretty much every day. I have a table in my house where I'm constantly working on a puzzle. I like exercising. I have kind of always exercise, and it helps me mentally, and it helps me feel tired so I can't sleep. I hang out with my dog and my kids and play. I like to watch videos of doggies online. I love dogs a lot, so I watch videos of different doggies, and I love that. And I'm kind of a closeted art history nerd. So I watch a lot of documentaries about painters, and I read about painters and art history. I don't tell people that because it sounds so nerdy, and it sounds like I don't have this fabulous life of going out and doing stuff, but I'm very much a homebody, and I very much enjoy just reading or doing nothing on the couch.
Wow, so you were a figure skater. You love art history. What motivated you to find such a field which has nothing to do with artwork? It's absolutely beautiful to know, and thank you for sharing this, because you are actually having kids and doggies and family, office, everything you are taking care, and you are saying that it is not that hard. And I think that's an inspirational thing that people should learn how to be happy with what they are doing the whole day.
Well, I guess I want to clarify. I do think it's hard, and I just happen to have a good support system. I mean, I'm thankful that I have a family, that I have the support of my spouse. I realized that if I was a single parent, it would be way more difficult. So it's not necessarily that I'm saying like, oh, it's easy, you just go, because I am very aware of different circumstances and economic circumstances, health-wise, you name it. And I also don't believe of the saying, just work in what you're passionate about, because passion, unfortunately, doesn't pay the bills. Like, you have to work. I just happen to be lucky that I do love what I do for work. So it doesn't necessarily kind of stresses me out. It's part of maybe learning to be a competitor. It takes a lot for me to be offended or to be stressed, because I try to put things into perspective and be like, well, at least I'm not doing this. At least I'm healthy. At least I have a job. So you don't have to do it all. You just have to do what makes you not only happy, but have some balanced life. If you don't want to do anything after work and you just want to sit on the couch and eat, like, by any means, if that's what's going to make you happy and have a healthy mental state, go for it. I also have to say that I do love art history, but I'm not an artist myself. You don't want to hear me sing. You don't want to see my paintings. None of that. I admire those people, but from a distance.
Wow, you are so humble, and I really feel like you are such a genuine person when you are talking that you love art history, but you're not an artist. You are an artist in a different field. If not art, then you are in cybersecurity. You're a thought leader. You're an amazing person. Keeping that in mind, what would be your piece of advice to our listeners and the individuals who will be listening to this particular YouTube video? What kind of journey should they look forward to if they are planning to entering this field of cybersecurity or AI or data privacy, as being a lawyer or as being an engineer?
I think it's important to be comfortable with not knowing what's going to happen. I haven't mastered that yet. I think it's common to have on a daily basis all kinds of doubts. Did I give the right advice? Did I do this? Should I even be doing this? There's so many days when I question, why did I go to law school? Why didn't I just become X or Y? Why can't I just be paid to travel the world and like taste different foods or something? So there's going to be those days frequently where you just don't feel like you are in the right place. And it's important to keep everything in context and see, okay, well, I did this, I graduated, I kind of handled my own on this situation. So I'm just having a day where things are kind of wacky. I think that's very important, because we also can tell how your career is going to go, how opportunities are going to present themselves. So if you have that very strict mentality and you plan, like, I have to be this and I have to become a partner at a law firm, I feel that you'll be very disappointed if that's not the case, if it doesn't happen how you imagine it or when you imagine it. So I will advise people to have a pretty flexible mind flexible plans, because you never know. Never in a million years I expected that I was going to get that case that started me in cybersecurity, that I was going to even like working at a firm, that I was going to do something like this if you asked me 20 years ago. So just be open-minded and willing to live through the great days and the days that are not so great, because it has to balance anyway. I mean, it will be really awkward if we all have like fantastic days every day.
Thank you so much for such beautiful piece of advice that we should have open mind and we should be flexible enough to adapt to whatever situations we are put into. You have had a very beautiful journey and we are so thankful and humbled that you like to share it with us. And when we invited you, you agreed to be here with us at Super Lawyer and LawSikho and Skill Arbitrage. It's an amazing experience and I'm so happy today. I'm feeling so humbled because of your presence, that you have achieved so much and yet you are so simple in your talks and the way you explain everything so simply. Thank you so much for being so nice to me, to us here. And we are very thankful that you appeared here on our YouTube channel.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It is an honor and a pleasure. And I'm always open to communicate with anybody, open to give advice if they want to hear it, and welcome anyone that wants to be in this field, in this career. You can do it. So thank you.